everybody. Good morning. Welcome to our 2025 Black History Month celebration. Today, you are in for a treat, as we have some very special guests with us. The panel you see before you are alumni of the Lexington Rosenwald School. The Rosenwald School, located on Hendrick Street in Lexington, first opened in 1928. This was the segregated school for Lexington, Red Bank, Pillion, and Gilbert, and at one point Irmo, until the late 1960s. In 1968, Lexington County Schools integrated, and in 1969, the Rosenwald School became Lexington Intermediate School. In 2023, the African American history class at Gilbert High School started a project to collect the stories of the men and women who attended Rosenwald. That year, the class titled their work, The Stories of Rosenwald, and interviewed 31 alumni. In 2024, the African American history class continued interviewing alumni and titled their work, This is Rosenwald. That year, they recorded the stories of another 36 alumni. Those are the profiles that you've seen up on the stage this week and out in the lobby when you walked in. I'm going to show a quick video that highlights the work that that group in 2023 did.
Ninth grade, I was a student at Lexington Rosenwald School. I stayed at Lexington Rosenwald from 9 to 12 for 4 years. Then I left there and I went to Allen University to college for 4 years. And I came back to Lexington Rosenwald as a teacher right after college. And I stayed at Lexington Rosenwald as a teacher for 8 years.
It made me kind of emotional because I actually got to sit down with these people and hear about what they went through.
This is our community. Rosenwald was literally like maybe 10 minutes away from the school, and I think it's just amazing on how like now our community and Lexington community knows about Rosenwald now.
They really wanted to make an impact. So they were excited to do the work for the community. I think the biggest thing that I saw out of the kids was they wanted to do the work for the community, not for themselves. It wasn't a grade attached to that piece, to the product. So it really was them doing work for other people, and it made the work meaningful.
I met Martin King in 1958, Andrew's Air Force Base. I led the group to integrate Andrew's Air Force Base in 1963.
Hearing it firsthand, it's a lot different than just reading about it. Reading about it, you don't really get that connection, but whenever we were actually interviewing them, you could tell that they experienced it, and it was just crazy to think that somebody actually had to go through this, because I've never had to experience anything like that. So it really hit hard whenever you actually hear their stories and what they have to say and what they have to go through.
All of them have like the same common theme that no matter how hard like these people made it for them, like they still made the best out of it, and they had a really fun time, and they felt like excited or like happy that like they could talk about their memories.
Hear them say, I met Rosa Parks, I met Martin Luther King Jr. It made them realize two things. Number one, history is real, and number two, this was not that long ago. That there are people sitting in the room with them that experienced segregation, that experienced discrimination in our community.
When our Congressman Floyd Spence came to speak, and of course he was an alumni of Lexington High School. He's passed, of course. When he came to speak, she chose me to do the national anthem. There were teachers that got up and walked out while I was singing the national anthem. They refused to sit and listen to me sing the national anthem. So, and we couldn't go to the library because we were going to touch the books.
Actually hearing a real life story, you're not going to hear that forever. At some point that generation is going to go away, and it's really good that we were able to keep that and be able to keep history.
It's so important because what we see now in our digital generation, we can't go back and look at letters. And kids don't want to go back and read letters. And it's hard to read the handwriting and all that kind of stuff. So to have the oral histories where someone can just sit around and listen to what they had to say, I think them alive and it keeps their experiences alive and it helps us learn about our past from all angles, not just what's in the book, but what happened here with regular people.
We gained a good sense of empathy throughout this. We really had to put ourselves in these people's shoes in order to create an even better final product than we could have if we didn't. And I think this has been an emotional thing for a lot of us, but we worked really hard on it and we're all very proud of it.
Okay, so some of the faces you saw in that video, you see right here as well. So just so you know who we have with us, we have Miss Elaine Eskew, Miss Carmela Powell, Mr. Tim Gates, Mr. Michael Johnson, Miss Constance Fleming, Miss Brenda Simpson, Miss Barbara Leapart, Miss Virginia Kennedy, and Miss Ethel Corley. We have Cassidy Gary, Azalea Keith, and Keely Michael who are going to ask questions, and we're just going to let them talk and we're going to hear their stories. So y'all enjoy.
Hello. We're all very happy to have you here today. Just for some clarification for those who don't know what Rosenwald Project is or what the school is, could you just please explain to us what Rosenwald was? And any of you guys can answer it anytime you'd like. Just explain to us like what Rosenwald School was.
Well, Michael Johnson, Rosenwald School was the basis for our lives. It was the center of the community. It was a place where we had teachers who cared about us, who loved us. And in my case, it gave me the basis for the rest of my life, and all the things that I was able to accomplish were all really a result of what happened at Rosenwald.
I'll just piggyback by saying that Rosenwald was a hub of the community in many ways. I can just say that in terms of educational experience, it was something that definitely molded my life and provided great opportunities for me as I moved forward. Actually, the quality of education was such that I can say going to college and even beyond in grad school, the coursework was not as difficult because of the rigorous training and the experiences that we had at Rosenwald. So I just wanted to say that to make sure you understand, and I'm saying that as a former educator myself, that the basic roots for the foundation for what I experienced at Rosenwald actually carried me throughout my educational experience. Thank you.
Rosenwald was the hub of our community, and our teachers instilled in us to do our very best, and so did our parents. So failure for any of us up here on the stage was not an option. And it didn't matter how we complained about how tough the courses were, we were encouraged. Our parents would say things like, stay in the books or get your lesson. And so we excelled and we felt loved every single day that we walked the halls of Rosenwald.
I too piggyback on what they've said, and as well as excelling educationally, we had to also be obedient, and they more or less enforced it. Many of the teachers knew our parents, and if we acted out before we made it home from school, our parents knew. And so everyone worked together with the families. The parents did not come and tell the teachers off. They thanked the teachers. So they helped modify my behavior in many ways.
I'd just like to add that Rosenwald began in 1929, and it was a school for African American students, and we had grades 1 through 12. And also, we had many activities and clubs for extracurricular activities.
I would also like to add that Rosenwald was located in Lexington, South Carolina. But the students that went to Rosenwald came from Gilbert and Lexington. We came from the one-room school. We came from the one-room schools in Gilbert and Lexington and went to Rosenwald. So the life at Rosenwald was good, but the people from Gilbert and Lexington had to pay some of them had to walk a mile to catch a bus. Some of them had to catch a bus to go to Rosenwald. But through it all, we were happy to do it because our parents were backing us. They would no matter how hard it got, they would always tell us to keep going.
Rosenwald was a great school in our time. That was the only school we had in our time. I live right down the street from Rosenwald, so I was at home almost every day. And like they said, just piggybacking on, if we done anything at school, the teachers knew our families. Rosenwald was actually just a big family. We had lots of fun, lots of activities, and very educational. So we did what we had to do, and I think as a group, as a whole, we all done real well. Thank you.
Like she said, Rosenwald was a great school, and we had great teachers. They really loved us, and they cared for us. But most of all, I remember Rosenwald was great in their athletics. We had great basketball and football. So I enjoyed Rosenwald. It was a great school.
I'll just finish. Some of us even had the distinction of having our parents. That my mother went to Rosenwald, and that for us carried on, that she was a student there, and as she said, played basketball out in the back. What we had as the playground was actually where they put the lights up, and they had the basketball games. So then when they built the gym, that was another advancement. But really, it was definitely community-based.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
When thinking about your time at school, were there any significant historical events that impacted your life?
Well, during the time that I was at Rosenwald, the civil rights struggle was in full bloom. And there were things going on all over the country, lawsuits, freedom rides, bus boycotts, Rosa Parks. I mean, all those things were going on. So in our world in Lexington, we got to see all of that. And at the time, we were thinking about how would that play out in our lives as we went forward. I ended up leaving Rosenwald, going to Allen University, but I came back to teach at Rosenwald. So my stint at Rosenwald was 2 different sessions, and in between that, I actually spent some time in jail demonstrating in Columbia, South Carolina for the ability to go into a restaurant or anywhere else we wanted to go. So the historical events, what was going on in the world, was impacting how we looked at our lives and how we looked at our fortunes. And Rosenwald gave me the basis to feel confident that we could make change, and we did.
It's like Mr. Johnson read my notes. But some significant events were the local marches in Columbia, sit-ins at Woolworth's in Columbia, the Greensboro sit-in, the March on Washington, and also during that time in the 60s, there were assassinations. Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, and others.
without being redundant, I want to kind of piggyback on what was said. I had the experience of, while I was at Rosenwald, seeing and wondering why. I had an uncle, Andrew Gates, who was one of the Freedom Riders, and I can remember him talking about, and of course we lived right next door to him, but my time at Rosenwald, he was talking about going places, and they would go places and march as well as take chances, and they had experiences where the Ku Klux Klan and other organizations like that would do many things that you probably today would probably not believe. But I always wondered why they went to those kinds of things as a student, you know, being at the school. And he also was a student that was a graduate of Rosenwald, but it kind of was perplexing to me that many of the people in our community would go to different counties in the state and participate in freedom rides as well as marches. And I can even remember being walking with the NAACP in Lexington, where we would have people who would throw eggs and hit us, and they were not of our race, as well as also they would drive cars, and if you were marching, you had to be very careful because they would try to run over you. And though, again, they were not of our race, but there were people who did many things, and as a student, you know, it was just perplexing to me that we were doing these types of things, and I didn't understand why my uncle and so many other people who actually, many of them were teachers and other people who worked at Rosenwald, they were actually going out, and I couldn't understand why they would put themselves in harm's way. Now, today I understand, because obviously if it weren't for them, then the path that we have trod would not be one that would have led us to where we are today. But I was always kind of confused about why people risk their lives, and of course I did some myself, but I always wondered, why am I doing this? And today, like I said, I can understand, but I just wanted to make sure that you understood that even as a student, you know, we weren't dealing with the kinds of things that you all are dealing with today. We actually had questions in our minds about whether on a Saturday we were going to actually go out and march with our parents and other people from the community to try to get some things changed that we wished would be changed. And so I just wanted to share that experience with you. Thank you.
And another thing, many of our churches, and I later became a pastor, and I understood then why Sister Carter's dad and Uncle Albert, I think, and children from Pleasant Hill and St. Paul had to go many times on the weekends wherever they decided we were going to Augusta. We had the opportunity to see Dorothy Cotton and other civil rights leaders. So the school, as well as the church and the community, they all linked together and made an impact on our lives, and hopefully we're making an impact on you all's lives. Today, for what you're learning now, you don't know what you'll be doing 50 years from now.
All righty, thank you for sharing.
Where were some of the places that you could and could not go due to segregation in Lexington?
I want to say, I got to start this off. Somebody just said we couldn't go nowhere. That's about right. But the one place that really kind of stuck out for me was Gibson's Pond. Some of you may know about that. And they have fixed it up now. Oh, we couldn't go there. We just were not allowed. You know, like one said, we allowed them to go, something go happen to the water. Well, it didn't. But anyway, we could not go there. And since they have fixed it up, I received a special invitation. I've also served on the town council for the town of Lexington. Surprise, surprise. But I received a special invitation to go, and I said, well, I couldn't go years ago. Why do I need to go now? And they said, well, what do you mean? Of course, these were individuals who did not live here, who did not know the history. So I had to do a little history lesson. And when I finished, the person with the invitation said, well, I may as well just put this in my pocket and leave you because you're not going. I said, you are so right. So there were it was almost like they said, we could hardly go anywhere. And if we did, say for instance, and sometimes downtown in the stores, If we went in the stores, people would follow us around to make sure we weren't going to do anything. You just heard me say about the library. When we integrated and I went to Lexington High School, we could not go to the library and do our work. Like you go to the library and check out books and, well, you know, books are kind of obsolete, whatever. But we couldn't really go to the library because the fear was that we were going to damage something in there, so we couldn't go. Now, that didn't say that we didn't receive the assignments and need to go, but we were not allowed to go. So our parents had to get together and take us to Columbia, to the library over there, because we didn't have a public library here yet. So our parents had to put us together and take us to Columbia so we could do our work. So that's a limitless deal there.
One of the places that I couldn't go was the public high school that was about 2 blocks from my house. And so I had to walk 1.5 miles to Rosenwald, even though I live right next to a school. Another place I couldn't go was the front door of a restaurant. And however, if I wanted to get a snack, there weren't no fast food places in those days. They were just restaurants. If I wanted to get a snack, I had to go around to the back window where people, usually black people worked in the kitchen, and they knew us. And the bonus was we usually get a little bigger order than the people that went through the front door because they would pile our plates up. But those were some places, as they said previously, that we really couldn't go very many places at all. It was very prescribed what we could do. And one of the biggest things I remember was I lived in a neighborhood in Lexington where there were very few other black children. And I used to play with the little white kids in the neighborhood. I was pretty young, preteen, and one person down the street, little boy that I would play with, one day I went down to play with him, and he came out and said, "I can't play with you anymore." So his parents had obviously told him he's not supposed to be playing with little black kids. That's what life was like at that time.
I'm older than a lot of these people on this panel, so I just want to say one of the places that it was, even in the doctor's offices, we had a color and a white, and we would have to be on that colored side, or else we wouldn't get waited on. Because my mama had to carry me to the doctor a lot of times, so that's how I know it. But and piggybacking off of what the guy said, I didn't get to come to town a lot of times, but when I did get to come to town, and if I hadn't had enough money to buy a sandwich, I always had to go to that back door to get that sandwich.
I just wanted to say, piggybacking on what has already been said, some of you are familiar with downtown Lexington. We had a store down there. It was a store called Sessions, and that store actually, the whites went in the front door, and the black people had to go in the back side. They had a back door, and you went to the back side of the store, and once you came into the store on the back side, you still had people who followed you. Other places in downtown Lexington were off limits to us, except sometimes you could go in the dime store, and of course, you know, the dime store is kind of like it would be equivalent today of something like maybe a Dollar General or something like that, or maybe the $1.25 store or the dollar store, something like that. You all know what I'm talking about. But anyway, it was pretty bad. Now, I can just share this with you that I kind of laugh at it today, but it was, we had to pick peaches, and so I picked peaches, and this person, white, discovered that I had the ability to utilize mathematical skills, and so I was the person, I had to laugh about it a lot. They bought all the peaches in the baskets, and this person who was over all of us couldn't count well, so I had to keep up with all the peaches, and I had to do all the paperwork and make sure that all the shipments went out and all of that. I was probably the last person that left the Peach Grader late at night. Got paid the same amount as everybody else. And then also, every Friday, I didn't pick peaches because they came to the house and then they took me to their house. They lived in downtown Lexington, and I did the paperwork for the insurance company. Now, this was pretty bad, but, you know, you're talking about things you couldn't do. I always wondered, you know, I wasn't good enough to do anything other than pick peaches, but whenever they needed paperwork done, I did all the paperwork for those peaches to be shipped all over the country and all over the world. Then this insurance company, and I'll just say it was Harmon Insurance Company, you know, they would give me something to say, okay, fake like you wiping something and dusting, and then, you know, when the white people came in, I always acted like I was doing some type of domestic work, but then when they left, you know, they would say, okay, well, we need for you to count all this money in the vault, and we need these books done, and we need all of this, and I did all of that. I also laughed because it was the same thing with my brother. I have a brother, Rodney, and Rodney would write kind of like this person wrote, but Rodney had the ability to keep up with some other things, and so Rodney did all of the like the time sheets and wrote out all the checks and all that. Most people didn't know that, but this person came to our house, and I would threaten Rodney to give me more hours that I actually worked, so I get paid more. And so I just want you to understand that things were a certain way as we experienced them. And so when you start talking about places you couldn't go, you know, Coach Johnson here mentioned this, and it's a fact, you know, Sheely's restaurant, you know, you could go to the window to get food, but you couldn't go in the door. But you had to pay the same amount that everybody else paid for the hamburger and french fries. You know, if you went to Heights, you go to Heights, and, you know, the barbecue, you know, you couldn't go in the front door. You had to go on the side door, and you get your barbecue, but you had to pay the same price that everybody else paid. You went to Herndon Chevrolet. I worked at Herndon Chevrolet. You could go to Herndon. You couldn't buy a car. If you bought a car, you had to go through the back. Yeah, and you go to the back, and it was like myself and others washing the cars, and we did all the work. But then this person sold the car, and even an African-American, if you bought a car, you bought it, but nobody saw you buy it in the front. You couldn't go into the place where they would stage the cars and all of that. They would pull the car around the back, and you could look at it. You know, we would wipe it up and wash it and all that type of thing. So things were quite different. I just want to make sure, and I'm just going to call a spade a spade. Things were not good at all. You need to hear the reality of what actually happened at that time, because it was not good. But they used us in every opportunity that they could to get the most out of us, and it irks me to this day that I did those things, and at the time I didn't think a whole lot about it, but why was it that I was put in a vault with hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I did all the paperwork, and then they took the money, went to the bank. I got paid little or nothing for what I did. I'm upset because sometimes I think about reparations and things like that. We deserve that because actually, even this little town of Lexington was built on the backs of African Americans who got nothing for what they did. Thank you.
I hate to hog this, but this bugs me too. One of my heroes growing up was my grandfather. He worked in the business in downtown Lexington, Grandfather Ornette. He worked for like 20 years in this business, doing heavy labor, hauling fertilizer out to all the farmers, taking the money to the bank, and got paid minimum wage. And they would always hire a person, a white person, to sit in the office who knew nothing about the business, but he was representing the business. Meanwhile, my grandfather was doing the work, including delivering the fertilizer in 200-pound bags to warehouses all over Lexington. So, as you just heard from Tim here, you know, we got to do the work, but we didn't. When my grandfather worked there all those years and he finally got where he couldn't work anymore, they barely came to see him, even though he'd been there for years and years and years, keeping the business going. And so it was a quite different time. And for all these people who don't appreciate it, we could very easily not realize how this country was really put together.
One thing I have to say for the times we had, I remember downtown Lexington at the drugstore, I guess you say on the corner, Harmon's Drugstore. We wanted to get ice cream, but we could not get vanilla. We had to have chocolate ice cream. It was really, really, really bad. And I also like to say one of the pillars of Lexington community, Mr. Andrew Gates, he was very prominent in Lexington. And I remember when I finished school, I didn't finish college, just only had a year. And he was saying, Brenda, he said, you've got to do something else. And he said, why don't you go up to the REA company in Lexington, which I didn't know what it was, but it was an electric company. And I said, okay. He said, you go there, you will be hired. He said, I'm a pillar in community, you just go there. Well, I went, and after about 6 weeks, they called me. And good to say that I did stay at Mid-Carolina Electric for 37 and a half years. But it was really hard when customers came in. I don't know, I can't listen to myself, but most time when I got calls, they didn't realize that I was not like them when they came in the office. I had a customer to come in the office one day. She was an older lady. I was in the office by myself at the front desk when we were on number 1 in Lexington. She walked in and asked, was there anybody there? And I'm there. So I let her sit there 45 minutes until they came back from lunch. If she wanted to wait that long, I could wait. But it was really, really hard. We had a really tough time. But at the time, honestly, I didn't know I had a tough time. That was all we knew. But we are just truly blessed, and look how far we've come. We have a great staff, I mean, very intellectual, important people here, and I'm proud to be amongst them.
Another place that we couldn't go was movie theaters and drive-ins. I can remember going to see the 10 Commandments, but we couldn't drive your car in or truck in. You had to sit outside on your car, in your car, or on the back of your truck to see the movie. And the drive-in was located where Jim Hudson's is today.
Okay, thank you.
So life was really hard during segregation based on your stories. So why did you choose to continue the legacy of Rosenwald?
Well, Rosenwald was so dear when I think about so many of my family members, my brother, who's now 91, and during that time when we were getting ready for integration, our teachers chose some of us who they thought was strong enough academically as well as temperament and what have you. So some of us went both places, to Rosenwald, but we graduated from Lexington High. Well, I was one of those. I was one of the first 2 African Americans to graduate from Lexington High. And Rosenwald became even bigger in my heart when I made the transition from everyone loving me, correcting me, to people not necessarily loving me in the same way, but I found that there were people that looked like many of you all, that in the times of crisis, they were there. But had I not gone to Rosenwald, I wouldn't have known the difference. You know, they were there as support. And I have some friends that I met at Lexington High. They will be my friends until I die. But Rosenwald, oh Rosenwald, when I would hear my brother saying when they finally had a school and he met people from everywhere, and the stories, and my sister, she doesn't talk as much, but my cousin who gave me my first low grade, Michael, because I was playing in his class, and even though we were like brothers and sisters, he gave me a low grade because he said, Elaine, you have to do your best. You have to do your best. And when I earned my doctorate degree from Wesley, seminary in D.C., and we were in the cathedral, right? We walked around and we said, had it not been, thinking back where we came from, children from Lexington walked around in the National Cathedral. So Rosenwald helped us be prepared for all of that. And so I love Lexington County, period. And someday I hope I can come back across Lake Mary Dam to Lexington County.
Rosenwald was our foundation, and you don't destroy foundations. And we want to keep the legacy going because that's where we learn what true love was like away from home. We had some very special teachers. One of them that I really want to talk about now is Miss Lucretia Wise. I had her as a 5th grade teacher. And not only did she teach us the math and all that, she loved us. She wasn't a teacher that taught subjects, she taught children. And they all instilled in us to do our very best, that no matter what it is that you knew that as well as anybody else who knew the same thing. And so we were encouraged to do our best, and we did. I'm not bragging, but because of that, I graduated #1 in my class. And my sister know I like to say, if I can't be first, I will be way out ahead of second.
Thank you so much. I just want to say a few things. First of all, many of you probably don't know it, but Julius Rosenwald was a white Jewish person. He actually made the contributions to Rosenwalds all over the United States. So don't think that Rosenwald in Lexington was the only Rosenwald. I will also just challenge you. I have participated in interviews. Dr. Thomas Crosby over at Allen University did research nationally and conducted many interviews. I will just say that I was lucky enough to be one of the people that was interviewed concerning Rosenwald, but there are Rosenwalds all over the United States. Some of them still exist. Most of them do not. But Julius Rosenwald, and he was in a little bit of a conflict with Booker T. Washington because Booker T. Washington at the time actually wanted to push vocational education. And that's something that was fine, but Julius Rosenwald had traveled around and he had a lot of money. He was a multimillionaire way back then and actually gave money to build different schools because he was concerned about the plight of minorities, in particular African Americans, and the fact that most of the schools that existed were one-room schools, if they were actually rooms at all. And many times there were schools that were being held, but they were outside or they were in sheds and things like that. And so Rosenwald actually provided the finances for many of the Rosenwald schools that existed then. One of the first Rosenwald schools, actually, and you probably don't know this, was over in Irmo. That school is still standing to this day. It is over, well, I won't tell you the actual location, do the research. I also challenge you to just go and Google Rosenwald schools, and you will find myself as well as many others who were Rosenwald School graduates from the state of South Carolina and across the country. Then I want to just go on to say that the legacy of Rosenwald actually was established because many of the people, almost all of the people who worked at the school actually were our relatives, whether they were relatives. I can just mention, for example, the principal at Rosenwald was a classmate of my mother in college. And from 1st grade through 12th grade, almost every teacher that I had was a relative or someone who was from the community. The gentleman who's seated next to me now, Coach Johnson here, he was actually a student at Rosenwald and an athlete at Rosenwald. He was a very strong academic person. He was a very good athlete. He actually, and I'll just say this, he was my coach. He was my football and basketball coach, as well as a mentor and kind of a role model. You know, I went on to actually coach and teach. I taught biology and chemistry. This gentleman was my biology and chemistry teacher. Another person, Willie Simon, Coach Simon was the head coach football, and actually he he was actually a teacher of physical education. My major was physical education, and my minor was biology, health and physical education, you know, the whole combination. Then I took chemistry and took physics and all of that, simply because I had role models who actually led me in a direction that was positive. So I want to just say that things are a little different now, but there was a time when people actually, as you saw in the beginning, Wayne Rawls. Wayne Rawls was featured on the program earlier, as you saw that video. He actually was a student at Rosenwald himself, and then he went on to graduate, and he came back to Rosenwald as a teacher and actually taught at Lexington High School as well. But I just want to say that there were many people who actually were teachers, who were our relatives, and they impacted our lives in ways that many others didn't. I can remember, and I'll just share this with you, I remember my third grade teacher, Aunt Bell. You know, she named me, and so people would mispronounce my name and call me something different. And I can remember she would pop me on my knuckles, and, you know, it was almost like it was my fault. It's like, I named you something else, and you better not answer to what they're calling you. Well, I didn't have a choice, but I just wanted to say that there were many people in our lives that impacted us, and I just thank, for example, Coach Johnson here for the impact that he had on my life, because I will tell you that, and you know, my experience has been, and I'll just say this, and I don't want to toot my horn, but you know, I worked for Clemson University Department of Fertilizer and Pesticide Control simply because I had an interest in biology and chemistry and things like that. The gentleman next to me now impacted my life in such a way that I actually went on and pursued a career in that. In addition to that, I worked for the Department of several other departments. I won't say all of that, but I did that because I actually was influenced by those people who were my teachers at Rosenwald, who I saw as mentors and I saw as role models. And so with that, the legacy is very simple. Well, we are just doing what we saw them do, and we're trying to be better at what we do as a result of what they did. Thank you.
I first have to thank Tim. Tim, it was a pleasure teaching him, and I feel very good about what he was able to do with what he got from his teachers, from myself, and all the progress he's made. And my story is very similar. When I left Rosenwald with all these great students that I coached and taught, and all I had learned when I was at Rosenwald, I was able to get a job. After 5 years of teaching at Rosenwald, I went to work for IBM, doing work for the classified agencies, the CIA, NSA, all those kind of folks. Most of the projects, if I told you about them, I'd have to come get you. So I can't tell you about them. But one project that I did do that you might be familiar with is there was a thing called the Strategic Airport Security Rollout, SASR. You can look it up, you can Google it. After 9/11, when we were attacked in New York City, they decided to upgrade all the airports in the country. And they wanted to do it in a very short time, so they hired Lockheed Martin, which is a company I worked for at the time, to do the work. I was the person responsible for teams all over the country that were upgrading airport security lanes, including the Columbia Airport. So the folks that worked for me did that work back in 2002. So the basis, to answer the question, the basis that all that was built on was my time at Rosenwald School. Thank you.
I just want to say that coming from a one-room school, I'm telling you all, I'm older than most of these people on this panel. I came from a one-room school named Holler Creek down in the Gilbert area. So my reason for being so excited about going to Rosenwald was because my parents, I must give my parents credit. My dad was big on you doing your work, you doing your homework, you doing and trying to educate yourself. My mom and dad both were big on that. So I that was always taught to me, and I had at that one-room school, there was a teacher, Ms. Maggie Bell Simpson, that taught at that school. She had 7 classes that she taught. And my reason, although I had to go to the highway, we lived about a mile and a half from number 1 highway. We had to go from out there to catch a bus. We didn't have a bus to ride on, a school bus. We had to catch a bus, go to Lexington, get off down there at A.C. Davis's garage and shop, and go across there to Rosenwald. So that's one reason why I tried so hard. I was so interested, and then I was tried so hard to go from Rosenwald onward, but I didn't get no further than Rosenwald. And also at that time we had teachers down there, Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Eleanor Richardson, and Professor Dawkins. Those were some of the teachers that taught me, and they all encouraged me to do my best, and that is what I tried to do. Although I must say that poverty was deep at that time in my family, so that's the reason I didn't get any further than I did. But down through the years, some out of the 10 did get further than Rosenwald.
I really hate to cut y'all off, but their class time is ending. So thank you all so much for coming and sharing your stories. You can see the love that you have for each other and for your school and for your community, and we greatly appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having us.